I love Canada. I love the people of Canada. Many friends that live in Canada, but their leadership, from Trudeau to the current leadership, I mean, in all fairness to them, they need us to survive. Without us, there's no way they can survive. So, but they've been very, very tough over a period of the last 50 years, actually.
They need us to survive. That is what the President of the United States just said about Canada. On camera, without hesitation, without apology, not a negotiating position, not a frustrated off-the-cuff remark, a deliberate statement of how Donald Trump fundamentally views this country and its people. Dependent, incapable, unable to survive without American permission. Your generation built this country. You lived through recessions and energy crises and trade disputes that felt impossible at the time. You watched Canada emerge from every one of those challenges stronger and more confident than before. And today, the President of the United States looked into a camera and told the world that without America, you cannot survive. Mark Carney heard those words, and within hours he stood in front of reporters and delivered a response that every Canadian needed to hear. Subscribe to Canada Line right now, because tonight we are breaking down both moments and why the contrast between them tells you everything about where this trade war actually stands. Let us be precise about what Trump said, because the full context matters. He was asked about the new 50% tariffs on Canadian goods. He said the wildfire tariffs were being handled separately. Then he said Canada has been very, very tough on America for many years, that no other president did anything about it, that he loves Canada and the Canadian people. And then the line that stopped every Canadian in their tracks. In all fairness to them, they need us to survive. Without us, there is no way they can survive. This is the worldview driving every tariff, every threat, every 51st state comment, every damages demand, every piece of pressure this administration has applied to Canada over the past 18 months. Trump genuinely believes Canada is a dependent territory that exists at American pleasure, that without access to the American market, Canada collapses, that Canadian leaders who push back are being ungrateful rather than sovereign. That belief is not just wrong. It is the most important thing to understand about why this trade war has been so difficult to resolve. Because you cannot negotiate normally with someone who does not believe you have the right to negotiate as an equal. But before we hear Carney's response, let us answer Trump's claim with facts. Because your generation deserves the truth, not just the emotion. Canada is projected to have the second fastest economic growth in the entire G7. Not just this year, next year as well. Canada is growing jobs at twice the rate of the United States right now. Foreign direct investment confidence in Canada is at its highest level in over 2 decades, growing at twice the rate of other G7 countries adjusted for economic size. Canada has signed more than 20 economic and security partnerships internationally in the past 18 months alone. That is not what a country that cannot survive without America looks like. That is what a country that spent 18 months of pressure building something stronger looks like. Trump said Canada needs America to survive. The economic data says Canada is thriving, while America's own tariff strategy has cost American manufacturing $188 billion in new costs, with 75,000 manufacturing jobs lost since Trump's re-election. Who needs whom becomes a more complicated question when you look at the actual numbers.
Yesterday, the United States announced the intention in 30 days, to launch the latest, what is a series of trade actions against Canada in violation of our agreement, CUSMA, with the United States and Mexico. And I want to put this in a bit of perspective, then answer a couple questions. The first is that in response to these actions, this began over 18 months ago. Canadians from coast to coast to coast have stood together. The federal government, provincial government, labor, business, Canadians themselves, uniting, focusing on what we can control, building strength here at home, supporting each other, buying Canadian, and diversifying partnerships abroad. We've signed more than 20 economic and security partnerships internationally. Investment, machinery and equipment's picking up, economy's picking up. We're growing jobs at twice the rate in the United States, with the fastest growth in foreign direct investment, investor confidence in Canada in over 2 decades, twice the rate of other countries. In the G7, we're projected to have the second fastest growth in the G7, not just this year, but next year going forward. So the country is stronger. We're stronger because we're united.
Listen to what Carney just did there. He did not respond to Trump's survival comment directly. He did not take the bait. He did not get angry or defensive or dramatic. He answered with 18 months of evidence. Jobs growing at twice the American rate, foreign investment at a 20-year high, second fastest G7 growth projected, 20 new international partnerships signed, provinces, premiers, businesses, and workers standing together. That is not the response of a country that needs America to survive. That is the response of a country that used 18 months of American pressure as fuel to build something it never would have built otherwise. And then Carney said the 4 words that matter most in everything he announced. We are stronger because we are united. For your generation, that sentence carries enormous weight. You lived through the National Energy Program and the Quebec referendum and the constitutional debates and the trade disputes. You know what Canadian disunity costs. You know what it looks like when provinces pull in different directions and Ottawa loses its grip. What Carney is describing is the opposite of that. A country that faced an external threat and responded not by fracturing but by coming together. Trump's pressure was supposed to divide Canada. Instead, it unified it. And then Carney said something else that deserves to be heard clearly by every Canadian tonight. He called the new tariffs a violation of our agreement. Not a trade dispute, not a policy disagreement. A violation of CUSMA, the agreement Trump himself negotiated and signed. The agreement he called the greatest trade deal ever made. The agreement that was supposed to govern the relationship between these 3 countries for years. Washington is now using a Depression-era law to impose tariffs that directly contradict the terms of the modern agreement sitting on the books. An agreement all 3 parties signed. An agreement that has legal weight and established processes for resolving disputes. Trump is not operating within the trade relationship. He is breaking it. And Carney named that directly, publicly, without diplomatic softening. Violation of our agreement. Your generation understands what it means when someone breaks their word. When a handshake is no longer worth anything. When the rules that were supposed to govern a relationship stop applying. It is not a small thing, and Carney was right to name it exactly as it is. Canada has 30 days before these tariffs take effect. August 19th is the date currently on the clock. And Carney announced immediately that he would be speaking with all the premiers later that afternoon, meeting with them in person the following day, convening the Canada-US Advisory Council, coordinating across every level of government before responding. That is the opposite of panic. That is exactly what experienced leadership looks like when a crisis arrives. Not a knee-jerk reaction, not an emotional retaliation designed to make headlines. A deliberate, coordinated consultation with everyone who needs to be at the table before Canada decides its next move. Trump makes decisions alone at midnight on a phone. Carney consults premiers, trade ministers, industry councils, and advisors before responding to escalation that has a 30-day window. That difference in process reflects a difference in character. And for Canadians who remember when this country had leaders who thought carefully before acting, it is genuinely reassuring to watch. Now let us come back to Trump's core claim, because it deserves a direct answer, not just economic statistics. They need us to survive. Here is what actually keeps the American economy functioning every single day. 4 million barrels of Canadian oil flowing into American refineries. Without it, American gas prices spike within weeks. Canadian potash feeding American farmland. Without it, American agricultural output collapses. Canadian uranium powering American nuclear plants, Canadian auto parts completing American vehicles, Canadian lumber building American homes, Canadian steel going into American infrastructure. That is why energy, potash, critical minerals, and fish were all exempted from the new 50% tariffs. Not generosity, necessity. The President of the United States told the world Canada cannot survive without America. His own tariff exemption list quietly confirms the opposite. Canada does not need America to survive. Canada needs a fair trading partner. There is a significant difference between those two things. And the country that needs to figure out how to treat Canada fairly is not Canada. Your generation has heard a lot of things said about Canada from foreign leaders over the decades. Some flattering, some challenging, some unfair. but they need us to survive is something different. It is not a negotiating position, or a tariff threat, or an economic argument. It is a statement about how one man views an entire country and its people, dependent, lesser, incapable of independent existence. And within hours of those words being broadcast across North America, Mark Carney stood up and answered them. Not with anger, not with insult, with 18 months of evidence that Canada has been building its own strength, its own partnerships, its own economic future at a speed that is outpacing every expectation. Second fastest G7 growth, 20 new international agreements, jobs growing twice as fast as America, foreign investment at a 20-year high. That is what survival looks like when you are Canada, not grateful dependency on American permission, not cowering under tariff threats waiting for relief that may never come. Building, investing, uniting, growing. Your generation built this country the first time from nothing. You know exactly what Canadians are capable of when they decide to move. Carney is moving. Canada is moving. And the man who said you cannot survive without him is watching a country that is proving him wrong in real time. Subscribe to Canada Line for honest analysis that respects your intelligence and your experience. Turn on notifications, and we will see you in the next one.